something you spoke about, I think, speaks to this concept too, is if you serve, and you talked a little bit about serving your soul, like serving like your connection, and how we need to focus on like that first before we sort of go outside of ourselves. But you're someone that's in such service to the world and service to others. So how do you find that balance where people need to serve their highest expression in their soul and their creativity, but then also be in service in a way that helps us make change for the rebirth?
I think we would find that those are not mutually exclusive of each other, right? And so my deepest joy is to be engaged in really intense living. I love the intensity of academics. I love the intensity of intellectual pursuit. I love the intensity of playing a djembe by a fireside with friends. I love the intensity of creating music. I love the feeling of guitar strings under my fingers. And so what blesses me deeply and what serves me spiritually, whether it be music by the fireside or creative process in my work, ultimately it needs to be for me first, and then it will be the highest expression of myself in service to others. But if I get those out of order and I lead with a sense of duty, that puts me in an endocrine state of deficiency, scarcity. There's not enough time for me, because I serve everybody else. So that puts the whole body in a sense of fight or flight state immediately upon awakening if you're trying to serve everybody else before yourself. And this is incredibly challenging in parenting, right? We have created nuclear families, which was, the most devastating thing perhaps to our sense of self, because it used to be that the kids would wake up in community and they'd run around together, and now the kid runs straight to mom at 5 o'clock in the morning and wakes her up from much needed sleep and expects everything to flow through that one woman or whatnot. And that is so exhausting as a parent when the entire tribe has been replaced by you, and so I think we can find out that we've kind of done that across the board. We've done that over and over again in isolation, creating this extreme sense of duty and service to others before self. And so it's important to think about how we start to redesign the family unit. How do we start to reimagine, the whole construct of these special relationships? Like exclusivity is not the answer. Nature has never worked through exclusivity. And so how do we start to imagine past that? How do we start acting in community as community? How do we start to serve ourselves before community? It's going to be a process because it's really never been done successfully. I believe maybe there's a few spots, but I can see it, already having its, kind of stress marks on it. And when I went down to a tribe in the South America this recent months, and I was deep in the Amazon with an incredible group, Pachamama Network, and the Pachamama Alliance with Lynn Twist and her incredible group there. They've been with this indigenous group for 26 years, and it was the last indigenous group on the planet to have touch with the colonial powers. And so they actually actively reached out to the West through dream work. They were the first in anthropologic history to reach out to a colonial power instead of just being invaded by. And so they did that because they saw in their dreams that they would be destroyed. Their forest would be destroyed by this power that was out there. And so they started reaching out through dreams and inviting people into their world through dream work. And when they showed up, they've been, the call has been, we need, our purpose as the Achuar is to help the West redream itself, redream its reality. And it's really humbling to be around a peoples that sees its own termination and reaches out with kindness and a sense of, community, a new sense of like, we all need to be connected. This is one thing. This is one planet. This is one peoples. And they've been carrying that, awareness for 40,000 years, living in the same location of the jungle for 40,000 years. And it's, the abundance quality is obvious when you're in that group. Their kitchens are kind of amazing. There's no refrigerators, there's no storage. They basically cook and prepare what they need that day, and then they go out in the rainforest and they collect again what they're going to eat the next day, because the forest has always provided for them for 40,000 years. And so when you walk into our kitchens and see all of the frenetic storage, and then you walk into our grocery stores and see the more vast amount of frenetic storage, we've forgotten that connection to a provision of nature. And we've outsourced that to monopolies and massive corporations. And so we need to start to regain that connection. So then the question is, well, are these indigenous people? Are they the answer? Do we just template after them? And I think the answer ends up being no. I think there's still a higher, transmutation that we're going to have to create for humanity, because you see a lot of the same vulnerabilities in their psyche as soon as they touch the West. Their kids are now going to schools in cities, and they're starting to get obesity and diabetes and diseases they've never had by just a decade or two of touch with the West. They're getting sick, and they're also, you can see them immediately, adopting the consumer behavior. They suddenly all want engines for their boats. They want, they've literally got cell phones in the jungle and they're scrolling Facebook. It's just like, whoa, that is so fast to take away the sense of freedom, the sense of autonomy that's been in there for 40,000 years. We managed to turn that off in 2 short decades, So consumerism is a powerful drug to the human brain. And so we're going to have to really collectively work to find the opposite, which is ultimately creativity, I hope.
Is consumerism like a dopamine, serotonin conversation, or what is that?
Yeah, it's all the reward pathways there. So you'll get norepinephrine, epinephrine kind of modulation, as well as the dopamine and serotonin. But it's basically a reward system, just like, you show the mouse how to push the button and a bean drops out. They'll keep pushing that thing at infinitum, because there's this immediate neural connection of, if I do this, I get this. And so it's a dangerous pattern in our neurology that I think we have the opportunity to grow out of. And instead of saying we push the button and something comes out, we ask the deeper question of, what are we really looking for? And maybe that's what the mouse hasn't been given the ability to ask. What are we actually looking for in life? What are we actually chasing? Is it really more stuff? Or is it actually space? Is it actually self-awareness? Is it actually a sense of peace? Is it actually a sense of community? Is it actually a sense of deep purpose within that's being expressed through creative capacity? And obviously, I think those are it. But how are we going to stop the addiction process? And so it's quite a journey we have ahead, and we have to do it really, really quick. But I think it's possible. I think that I see, for every darkness of our moment, I see an opposite and equal light within our moment. And people are popping off right now. And people are waking up to realizing that they had put themselves in a box. The world had put them in a box, spiritually into their religion boxes, relationally into their exclusive special situations, into the
family box,
the work box. I'm
the Happy Meal box.
I'm an employee. Yeah, very good example. So we've been reductionist in that opportunity, and there's an opportunity to kind of just blow all of that up. And I see it happening all over. If anything's happened in 2021, which I think is one of the questions, is I think we are seeing the dichotomy of control and freedom. Mm-hmm. And we're seeing freedom rise, and we're seeing control rise at the same rate, which is creating this extraordinary stress on the society, on the planet. It's creating psychosocial stressors among us. And we need to be called to take the time now to say, okay, what is the space between those two extremes? Instead of rushing towards the control or the freedom, what's the space between? What's all of that plasticity in between capable of holding? And that's where we're going to find our future. There's a great scripture, Ecclesiastes, that says, I've seen two evils. One is a foolish man living long in his foolishness, and one is a wise man dying young in his wisdom. And it is better to grasp the one while not letting go of the other, the foolishness and the wisdom. And so it's better to grasp them both. And the next line always gives me goosebumps. For God is in heaven, you are on earth, so let your words be few. For a guy who talks his brain out all the time, I have to remind myself all the time that my words should be few. I need to be generous with the space between my words. Mm-hmm. So I hope that everybody listening here is feeling me more than listening to me, because I showed up here today to be present with all of you and to show you the hurt, the hope, the frustration, the sense of loss, the sense of gain, the sense of freedom, the sense of fear, all of that within me. And I'm just going to stand here for a moment and reflect all that back at you, because it's the same as you're going through. And it's not something we need to hold on to. We can just acknowledge that's all flowing through. Let go of it. Surrender it. Be in the space between our words.
Thank you so much for tuning in to Morning Microdose by Almost 30.
We hope you enjoyed waking up.
As always, we encourage you to take what resonates and leave the rest. If you enjoyed this trip, tune into the full episode on the Almost 30 podcast. All episode information can be found in the show notes.
Make sure to subscribe, and if this becomes a part of your morning routine, be sure to share it with a friend. We have new inspiring doses Monday through Friday. Follow us on Instagram at Morning Microdose, and follow Almost 30 at Almost 30 Podcast.
Thanks for listening. We'll see you in the vortex.